The Trojan War stands as one of the most powerful and enduring legends of the ancient world, a tale that weaves together heroism, betrayal, divine intrigue, and the complexities of human emotion. In this video, we'll explore the rich tapestry of myth and possible history behind the epic conflict between the Greeks and the Trojans. From the wrath of Achilles to the cunning of Odysseus, and from the love of Paris and Helen to the fall of mighty Troy, we'll break down the legendary story that has captivated minds for thousands of years and remains just as compelling today. We'll also examine the origins of the tale through Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, the archaeological discoveries at Hisarlik that reignited belief in a historical Troy, and the broader cultural significance of the war throughout the centuries. Was there truly a war that inspired these myths, or are we simply reading too much into a poetic vision? By combining literary analysis with historical evidence, we'll dive deep into both the fact and the fiction behind one of humanity's greatest stories. Before we continue, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming 4K history documentaries. Your support helps us keep bringing history to life, and we truly appreciate every single one of you for being part of this journey. The Judgement of Paris. The roots of the Trojan War trace back to an event known as the Judgement of Paris, a contest among goddesses fueled by vanity, pride, and rivalry. Zeus, king of the gods, wisely chose not to judge a dispute over beauty between Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, understanding the discord it could cause among Olympus's immortals. Instead, Zeus appointed a mortal, Prince Paris of Troy, to bear this responsibility, unknowingly setting the stage for one of history's greatest conflicts. Paris, renowned for his fairness and charm, became entangled in a divine drama far beyond his mortal comprehension. Hera promised him immense political power, offering dominion over vast territories and an unrivaled kingdom. Athena vowed unparalleled military wisdom and prowess, a guarantee of everlasting glory on the battlefield. Yet Aphrodite, understanding human desires better, made a promise impossible for Paris to refuse. Helen of Sparta, the most beautiful woman alive, would be his wife. This offer of Helen triggered profound consequences. Paris, swayed by Aphrodite's alluring promise, awarded her the golden apple symbolizing supreme beauty, igniting immediate resentment from the other goddesses. Hera and Athena became fierce opponents of Troy, determined to punish Paris and his city for his perceived slight. This divine resentment would later manifest significantly during the war itself, influencing countless human destinies. Unbeknownst to Paris, his choice set a catastrophic chain reaction in motion. His decision, seemingly minor and driven by personal desire, demonstrated how divine machinations intertwined intimately with mortal lives, blurring the line between free will and predestined fate. Paris's choice was thus not merely a personal preference, but a pivotal moment shaping human and divine histories. Thus began the story leading directly to war, encapsulating fundamental human themes of desire, choice, and consequence, framed by a cosmic backdrop of gods manipulating human destinies. Paris's judgment remains a vivid lesson in ancient Greek literature, illustrating the profound repercussions of seemingly simple human decisions when influenced by divine interests. Abduction of Helen. Helen, famed throughout Greece for her extraordinary beauty, was initially the wife of King Menelaus of Sparta, solidifying a strategic alliance within the Greek states. Menelaus, a powerful and proud ruler, cherished Helen not only for her legendary beauty, but also for the political stability their marriage symbolized. Yet, Helen's allure, known far beyond Spartan borders, made her the inadvertent prize in Aphrodite's promise to Paris. Paris, emboldened by Aphrodite's divine assurance, journeyed to Sparta ostensibly as an honored guest, welcomed graciously by Menelaus. Hospitality in ancient Greece was sacrosanct, but Paris's intent was far from noble. Captivated immediately by Helen, he saw not only a beautiful woman, but the fulfillment of Aphrodite's promise, the realization of his desires, seemingly blessed by divine intervention. The circumstances of Helen's departure with Paris remain contentious. Classical sources differ over whether Helen willingly fled or was forcibly taken. Regardless, her disappearance with Paris sparked outrage. Menelaus felt profoundly betrayed, both personally and politically. His honor as a king and husband demanded retribution, setting the stage for conflict that would envelop all of Greece. Menelaus rallied allies bound by honor and past promises, notably invoking the oath of Tyndareus, sworn by numerous Greek leaders to protect his marriage to Helen. This call united diverse Greek states, transforming personal grievance into national cause. Helen, willingly or unwillingly, became the catalyst for war, her story encapsulating broader themes of honor, vengeance, and the devastating consequences of unchecked desire. Thus, Helen's abduction symbolized more than a personal betrayal. It highlighted the intricate dynamics between personal honor, political alliances, and divine manipulation, ultimately providing the spark necessary to ignite one of the most legendary conflicts in human history. Oath of Tyndareus. The unity of Greece against Troy was primarily cemented through an ingenious political maneuver known as the Oath of Tyndareus. Helen's father, King Tyndareus of Sparta, faced a precarious dilemma during her marriage arrangement. Helen's legendary beauty attracted countless powerful suitors, each presenting risks of conflict and division among Greece's leading powers. Seeking a solution to prevent future strife, Tyndareus required every potential suitor to swear an oath to defend Helen's chosen husband, whoever he might be, against any aggression. This unprecedented agreement effectively united disparate Greek rulers through mutual obligation. Each suitor willingly swore the oath, unaware of the future implications, binding them to defend Helen's marital choice at any cost. When Helen was later abducted by Paris, this previously sworn oath triggered an extraordinary response. Menelaus invoked this promise, instantly obligating Greece's most powerful leaders to action. Despite varied political interests and rivalries, the oath's sacred nature compelled a unified front, establishing one of ancient history's most formidable coalitions. This oath not only demonstrated political ingenuity, but also profound insight into human honor and pride. It strategically harnessed these elements to maintain political stability, yet ironically, it became the mechanism precipitating Greece's collective war effort against Troy. Its consequences far exceeded initial intentions, leading to years of warfare, heroic deeds, and monumental tragedies. Thus, the Oath of Tyndareus became an essential catalyst, uniting Greece under Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, who emerged as the commander of the united Greek forces. Agamemnon's leadership was critical, yet his ascendancy also foreshadowed deeper tragedies and personal losses that would plague him, highlighting complex interplays of duty, ambition, and fate central to the Trojan saga. Assembling the Greek forces. As Greece prepared for war, legendary heroes assembled from every corner, each driven by their honor, ambition, and sworn oaths. Foremost among these were Achilles, the unparalleled warrior, Odysseus, famed for cunning and strategic brilliance, Ajax, known for strength and bravery, and Diomedes, respected for valor and military prowess. Together, these heroes formed a formidable core for the Greek assault on Troy. Achilles, renowned for his combat skills and formidable presence, initially hesitated, warned by prophecy that glory on the Trojan battlefield would come at the cost of an early death. Despite this foreknowledge, Achilles chose fame and immortality through deeds over longevity, embodying Greek heroic ideals profoundly. His involvement significantly boosted Greek morale, instilling confidence and determination among his comrades. Odysseus, however, was initially reluctant to leave his peaceful kingdom of Ithaca. Known for his wisdom and tactical mind, Odysseus sought ways to avoid combat, feigning madness in a desperate attempt to remain home. His deception was quickly uncovered, forcing his hand and placing him at the forefront of the Greek effort, where his strategic genius would repeatedly prove crucial. The assembling forces represented the full military might and diverse talents of Greece. These warriors, motivated by personal honor, sworn obligations, and divine prophecies, exemplified heroic ideals and human complexities, each bringing distinct strengths and vulnerabilities to the campaign. Thus, Greece's assembly of heroes set the stage for a legendary conflict, marking the beginning of a collective journey that would forever redefine their lives and shape the annals of history. Sacrifice of Iphigenia. The gathered Greek forces, eager and united, faced a daunting and unforeseen challenge at the shores of Aulis. where their fleet awaited favorable winds to sail toward Troy. Day after day, the winds refused to blow, immobilizing the mighty fleet and straining morale among the impatient warriors. The gods, it seemed, withheld their favor, demanding an extraordinary price from the Greeks, especially their leader Agamemnon. Desperation soon turned into divine consultation, and the seer Calchas delivered a dire message. Artemis, goddess of the hunt and protector of innocence, had been angered by Agamemnon's arrogance. To appease her and gain safe passage to Troy, Agamemnon was compelled to offer his daughter Iphigenia as a sacrifice. The horrifying revelation shocked the Greeks, presenting Agamemnon with an impossible moral dilemma that tested the limits of his leadership and humanity. Agamemnon agonized deeply over this grim choice. He was torn between the personal love for his child and the overwhelming pressure of his leadership obligations. He knew that refusing to comply with Artemis's demands risked total mutiny among the Greek ranks, undermining the entire war effort. After much inner turmoil, Agamemnon deceitfully summoned Iphigenia under the pretense of marriage to Achilles, luring his innocent daughter to a fate she could neither anticipate nor escape. Upon realizing the truth, Iphigenia bravely faced her destiny, embodying grace and courage despite her heartbreaking predicament. Her tragic sacrifice symbolized not only the painful demands of leadership, but also the ruthless and demanding nature of the ancient gods. The sacrifice itself became an ominous precedent, foreshadowing the brutal and morally ambiguous choices that would characterize the Trojan War. This dark event echoed throughout the war, haunting Agamemnon profoundly. His decision would ultimately set in motion further tragedies, underscoring the heavy burden of command and highlighting the price mortals often paid for divine favor. The memory of Iphigenia lingered among the Greeks as a grim reminder of the cost of ambition, forever etched into the fabric of this legendary conflict. Arrival at Troy and initial siege. The Greek fleet, finally propelled by favorable winds, set sail across the Aegean Sea toward the shores of Troy, marking the official onset of one of the ancient world's greatest sieges. Arriving near the heavily fortified city, the Greeks quickly established their encampment, aware that breaching the formidable walls of Troy would require extraordinary patience, ingenuity, and courage. The Trojans, alerted to the impending Greek invasion, braced themselves resolutely, fully prepared to defend their home against foreign aggression. Early skirmishes between the two mighty forces set the stage for prolonged conflict, each battle demonstrating the martial prowess and bravery of both sides. Trojan warriors such as Hector, the eldest prince and heir apparent, Paris, whose actions had provoked the war, Aeneas, known for his valor and later mythological significance, and Sarpedon, famed for his courage, took prominent roles in repelling Greek attacks. They became symbols of Trojan resilience, inspiring their compatriots to stubbornly resist Greek aggression. King Priam of Troy, respected for his wisdom and just rule, oversaw the defense efforts, serving as a fatherly figure who united his people. Under his steadfast leadership, Trojans successfully resisted repeated assaults, turning what the Greeks initially anticipated as a quick victory into a grueling stalemate. Priam's diplomatic and military acumen proved vital in maintaining high morale and determination among his warriors and citizens alike. Meanwhile, the Greek forces faced internal strains and logistical challenges. The siege, expected to last mere weeks, stretched into years, demanding relentless perseverance and steadfast resolve. Supplies dwindled, tempers flared, and morale fluctuated dramatically. Yet, driven by honor, vengeance, and divine promises, Greek heroes like Achilles, Ajax, and Odysseus maintained cohesion, recognizing the need for relentless persistence to overcome Troy's formidable defenses. Thus, the initial siege phase set the tone for a prolonged and arduous conflict, highlighting themes of endurance, unity, and determination amidst overwhelming obstacles. The Greeks, now entrenched before Troy, understood clearly that victory would demand tremendous sacrifice, strategic ingenuity, and unwavering commitment over years of bitter conflict. Role of the gods. Throughout the Trojan War, the gods played an active and pivotal role, deeply influencing the course of events through both subtle manipulations and overt interventions. Zeus, Apollo, Athena, Poseidon, and other Olympian deities chose sides, each guided by personal vendettas, favoritism, or strategic considerations. Their involvement transformed a mortal conflict into a divine chess match, amplifying human drama and intensifying every battle. Zeus, king of gods, remained enigmatic, initially neutral, yet occasionally tipping the scales, carefully maintaining cosmic balance. His subtle guidance underscored the war's inevitability, reflecting the ancient Greek belief in fate's unstoppable force. Apollo, closely aligned with the Trojans, regularly aided them, notably guiding Trojan arrows and shielding key warriors. His assistance proved instrumental in prolonging Troy's resistance, illustrating divine partiality and its profound battlefield consequences. Athena and Hera, still bearing grudges against Troy from Paris's judgment, fervently supported the Greek forces. Athena especially bestowed critical guidance and strategic insights to Greek leaders, often directly participating in battles through her favored warriors like Odysseus and Diomedes. Poseidon, sharing grudges against Troy, similarly influenced the war by sabotaging Trojan defenses or empowering Greek attacks at pivotal moments, highlighting the gods' deeply personal involvement in human affairs. The frequent divine interventions exemplified the ancient Greek worldview, where mortal destinies were deeply intertwined with divine whims. Heroes found themselves not merely fighting mortal foes, but actively engaged in conflicts shaped profoundly by immortal agendas. This divine interplay intensified dramatic tensions, making victory or defeat uncertain and compellingly unpredictable. Thus, the gods' active role elevated the Trojan War from a mere mortal conflict to a narrative imbued with cosmic significance. Their pervasive presence reflected deep beliefs about divine justice, human agency, and the delicate interplay between fate and free will, ultimately providing timeless lessons on humility, reverence, and the unpredictable nature of divine favor. Achilles' wrath and withdrawal. The unity of Greek forces before Troy suffered a devastating blow through an intense personal dispute between Achilles and Agamemnon, illustrating vividly the fragile nature of human alliances and pride's destructive potential. The quarrel erupted when Agamemnon, compelled by pride and entitlement, took Achilles captive, Briseis, leading to profound humiliation and wounded honor for Achilles, who felt dishonored publicly and personally betrayed. Achilles, renowned for his valor and crucial military prowess, reacted with indignant rage, decisively withdrawing from combat. His absence from the battlefield immediately weakened the Greek offensive capabilities, drastically reducing morale and emboldening Trojan defenses. The void left by Achilles significantly altered the war's momentum, showcasing how individual conflicts profoundly impacted collective military endeavors. Achilles' withdrawal symbolized not merely personal grievance, but a critical exploration of pride, honor, and individual worth versus collective responsibility. Achilles stood firm, unwilling to compromise personal honor despite urgent pleas from fellow Greek commanders. This stubborn pride underscored ancient Greek ideals, demonstrating the complex interplay between personal reputation, individual rights, and overarching duty in warfare. The consequences of Achilles' wrath became immediately evident as Trojan forces, reinvigorated and sensing vulnerability among the Greeks, launched devastating counterattacks. Hector notably rose to prominence during this period, leading decisive Trojan victories that inflicted severe losses on the Greek army. Achilles' absence thus significantly shifted battlefield dynamics, illustrating starkly how personal pride and wounded honor could drastically alter collective destinies. Achilles' withdrawal highlighted fundamental human complexities of pride, honor, and the intricate balance between individual dignity and collective obligations. His absence intensified battlefield stakes, dramatically altering the war's trajectory and emphasizing how deeply personal emotions could dictate broader historical outcomes. The Duel of Paris and Menelaus. As the war ground into a seemingly endless stalemate, Menelaus saw an opportunity to settle matters decisively through single combat, directly challenging Paris to a duel. This confrontation was more than just personal. It symbolized justice, honor, and resolution of the conflict itself. Both armies eagerly watched, aware the outcome might finally end the war, sparing further bloodshed and suffering. Paris, initially hesitant, accepted the duel under immense pressure, driven partly by his own pride, but mostly by the expectation of his fellow Trojans. Menelaus, brimming with righteous fury, dominated the fight, quickly proving himself the stronger warrior. The Spartan king's relentless attack soon overwhelmed Paris, leaving the Trojan prince vulnerable and near defeat. However, at the critical moment, divine intervention dramatically altered events. Aphrodite, loyal protector of Paris, swiftly rescued him, shrouding him in mist and removing him safely from the battlefield. This blatant divine interference infuriated Menelaus and deeply frustrated the Greek army, denying them a clear victory and prolonging the bitter conflict. The duel's abrupt end dramatically illustrated the limitations of mortal efforts in the face of divine power. Greeks and Trojans alike were reminded that their fates were not solely their own, but intertwined with the unpredictable whims of the gods. Peace, momentarily within reach, vanished abruptly, renewing hostilities with greater intensity and bitterness. This pivotal event underscored the profound influence of the gods, while also exposing the deep frustrations of human ambition thwarted by forces beyond their control. Rather than resolving the war, the duel further entrenched animosity, ensuring the continuation of the brutal struggle with no immediate end in sight. Hector's dominance. With Achilles' withdrawal, Hector emerged prominently, becoming Troy's central figure of resistance and valor. Hector's formidable skills as a warrior, combined with inspirational leadership, dramatically shifted momentum in Troy's favor, renewing hope within the besieged city. The Greeks, increasingly demoralized by their inability to break Hector's lines, found their morale tested to unprecedented levels. Hector exemplified the Trojan spirit, tirelessly leading counterattacks that consistently repelled Greek assaults. His courage and battlefield acumen earned widespread respect, even among his Greek enemies. Hector's prowess in combat provided a powerful contrast to Achilles' absence, emphasizing his crucial role in prolonging Troy's resistance and deepening Greek frustrations. The Greek commanders recognized Hector's growing dominance with deep anxiety, aware their forces struggled increasingly against the reinvigorated Trojans. Hector's achievements not only inspired Trojan soldiers, but also placed enormous pressure on Greek leadership, revealing their vulnerabilities and amplifying internal tensions among commanders like Agamemnon and Odysseus. Hector's ascendancy also reflected broader themes of responsibility and leadership under extreme adversity. Unlike Paris, Hector shouldered the immense burdens of defending Troy with unwavering dedication, embodying ideals of bravery, familial duty, and patriotism. His steadfast presence highlighted the noble qualities that made him one of ancient literature's most admired figures. Hector's dominance dramatically reshaped the war's dynamics, reinvigorating Trojan morale while severely testing Greek resolve. His successes underscored the profound impact individual leadership could exert in warfare, setting the stage for later dramatic confrontations that would profoundly influence the war's outcome. Embassy to Achilles. Recognizing their precarious situation due to Hector's unchecked dominance, Agamemnon and the Greek leaders urgently reconsidered Achilles' absence. Agamemnon, finally acknowledging his grave mistake, attempted reconciliation by sending an embassy comprising Odysseus, Ajax, and Phoenix, hoping their persuasive words might soften Achilles' hardened heart and bring him back into battle. Odysseus eloquently appealed to Achilles' reason, detailing Agamemnon's generous offers of wealth, honor, and restitution. His persuasive rhetoric highlighted collective necessity, urging Achilles to prioritize greater glory and shared victory over personal grievances. Ajax emphasized the bonds of brotherhood among warriors, appealing emotionally to Achilles' sense of camaraderie and duty. Phoenix, Achilles' childhood mentor, delivered the most personal plea, invoking shared memories and emotional bonds, attempting to reach the hero's heart through paternal affection. Each envoy's distinct approach aimed carefully at different facets of Achilles' personality, hoping desperately that one would penetrate his stubborn pride and rekindle his fighting spirit. Despite these passionate pleas, Achilles resolutely refused reconciliation, remaining unmoved by generous promises and heartfelt appeals. He remained fixated on his personal honor and sense of betrayal, choosing isolation over compromise. His decision underscored complex human emotions at play, illuminating starkly the powerful forces of pride, honor, and personal resentment shaping individual choices. This failed embassy profoundly deepened the Greek crisis, intensifying their plight as they faced Hector's growing threat without their greatest warrior. Achilles' continued withdrawal emphasized sharply the fragility of leadership, unity, and morale, highlighting profoundly the catastrophic consequences personal pride could inflict on collective endeavors. Greek spies and night raid. In an attempt to regain initiative, Greek commanders authorized a daring espionage mission under the cover of night. Odysseus and Diomedes, chosen for their cunning and valor, ventured secretly into Trojan territory, navigating carefully through darkness and danger. Their mission was to disrupt enemy intelligence and morale by neutralizing key targets. Their audacity paid immediate dividends when they intercepted and captured Dolon, a Trojan spy dispatched by Hector to gather intelligence on Greek plans. Dolon, quickly terrified into submission, revealed crucial details about Trojan positions, strategies, and vulnerabilities. His interrogation provided invaluable insights for subsequent Greek military operations. Odysseus and Diomedes then proceeded boldly to the enemy camp, exploiting Dolon's intelligence. They attacked Rhesus, the Thracian king allied with Troy, known for his formidable warriors and prized horses. Successfully eliminating Rhesus and seizing his horses, they struck a severe blow to Trojan morale and strategic capabilities, demonstrating vividly the value and effectiveness of covert operations in warfare. This daring night raid significantly boosted Greek spirits, proving their capacity for initiative and resilience even amidst setbacks. The raid showcased Odysseus' famed resourcefulness and Diomedes' courage, further elevating their status among Greek heroes and reinforcing their crucial roles in the prolonged conflict. Thus, the espionage mission marked a turning point in Greek strategy, demonstrating the effectiveness of intelligence gathering and surprise tactics. Its success highlighted essential themes of cunning, bravery, and tactical innovation, providing the Greeks renewed hope and strategic advantage amidst prolonged warfare. The death of Patroclus. Achilles' absence from the battlefield, while a symbol of personal pride, inadvertently set the stage for one of the war's most tragic turning points, the death of Patroclus. Deeply distressed by Greek losses and the dominance of Hector, Patroclus, Achilles' closest friend and companion, begged to lead Achilles' troops into battle, hoping to turn the tide in Greece's favor. Reluctantly, Achilles consented, granting Patroclus his distinctive armor to inspire fear among Trojans. Patroclus, emboldened by Achilles' armor and reputation, fought with extraordinary courage and vigor, initially driving back the Trojans and boosting Greek morale. However, intoxicated by success and glory, Patroclus pushed too far into enemy lines, dangerously exposing himself. He encountered Hector, who mistakenly believed he faced Achilles himself, and fiercely challenged him. In their intense combat, Hector, fueled by unwavering resolve, overcame Patroclus, striking him down decisively. As Patroclus fell, the Trojan prince swiftly claimed Achilles' armor as a trophy, sending shockwaves of grief and disbelief through Greek ranks. The loss was not only tactical but deeply emotional, profoundly affecting the Greeks, who regarded Patroclus as a symbol of hope in Achilles' absence. Patroclus' death became the emotional catalyst necessary to awaken Achilles from his self-imposed exile. Achilles, upon learning of his friend's fate, was consumed by overwhelming grief and unquenchable thirst for vengeance. His sorrow transformed rapidly into a fierce determination to avenge Patroclus, reigniting his warrior spirit and dramatically altering the course of the war. Thus, Patroclus' tragic demise underscored the immense personal sacrifices inherent in war, illustrating how deeply personal bonds could shape historical outcomes. It dramatically reignited Achilles' commitment, setting the stage for future climactic confrontations, forever altering the war's emotional landscape. Achilles returns to battle. Fueled by grief and relentless desire for vengeance, Achilles reconciled swiftly with Agamemnon, putting aside past grievances to focus solely on avenging Patroclus. Agamemnon generously compensated Achilles, acknowledging his past errors and fully recognizing Achilles' indispensability to the Greek cause. This reconciliation symbolized a critical moment of unity, restoring strength and cohesion to the beleaguered Greek forces. Achilles, rearmed with magnificent new armor crafted by the god Hephaestus, prepared to face Hector and the Trojans once again. The armor, gleaming with divine brilliance, became symbolic of Achilles' renewed purpose and divine favor, sending waves of fear throughout Trojan ranks and bolstering Greek morale significantly. Achilles' return fundamentally shifted the psychological and military dynamics of the conflict. His fury manifested immediately upon his return to battle. Achilles cut through Trojan lines relentlessly, demonstrating unparalleled combat skill and ferocity. He single-handedly transformed the war's momentum, routing enemies effortlessly, driven by raw emotional intensity that terrified even his own comrades. His presence reinvigorated Greek spirits, restoring confidence and strategic initiative. Achilles' relentless pursuit of vengeance carried profound thematic resonance, exploring the depths of human grief, rage, and redemption. His transformation from withdrawn warrior into unstoppable avenger vividly illustrated the destructive yet powerful force of human emotion, showcasing how individual passion could decisively shape historical events. Thus, Achilles' dramatic return marked a turning point in the Trojan War, altering its course irrevocably. His renewed presence not only shifted battlefield dynamics, but also deeply explored themes of grief, revenge, and redemption, defining crucial moments in the saga of Troy. Achilles' duel with Hector. Achilles' long-awaited confrontation with Hector became one of the Trojan War's most emotionally charged and iconic episodes. Driven by vengeance and profound grief over Patroclus' death, Achilles pursued Hector relentlessly, determined to exact personal justice and restore Greek honor. The inevitable clash between these legendary warriors captivated both sides, symbolizing the ultimate confrontation of Greek and Trojan ideals. Hector initially considered avoiding direct conflict, recognizing Achilles' unmatched ferocity and divine favor. Yet, compelled by honor and responsibility, Hector courageously faced his adversary, fully aware of the overwhelming odds. Their duel represented not merely personal conflict, but profound cultural ideals. Achilles personified passionate vengeance, while Hector embodied courageous duty and sacrifice. Their fierce combat unfolded dramatically, yet swiftly favored Achilles, whose unmatched martial prowess overwhelmed Hector's formidable defenses. With ruthless precision, Achilles struck Hector down, fulfilling his solemn vow to avenge Patroclus. Yet, victory alone did not satisfy Achilles' grief-stricken fury. He desecrated Hector's body, dragging it around Troy's walls, shocking even hardened warriors on both sides. This desecration profoundly affected both Trojans and Greeks, vividly showcasing Achilles' intense emotional turmoil and profound disrespect for sacred customs and human dignity. The act dramatically underscored war's brutal realities and its devastating impact on human morality and compassion. Hector's death dramatically demoralized Troy, robbing the city of its greatest defender. Yet, it also revealed deeper themes about heroism, mortality, and dignity in warfare. Achilles' brutal act prompted profound reflections on human cruelty, grief, and the ethics of vengeance, leaving an indelible mark on the epic narrative. Funeral games for Patroclus. Following Hector's defeat, Achilles held elaborate funeral games in honor of Patroclus, symbolizing profound grief, friendship, and the complex emotional bonds among warriors. These events offered brief respite from brutal warfare, providing Greek forces an opportunity for reflection, camaraderie, and healing amidst overwhelming grief and exhaustion. The games, featuring chariot races, foot races, wrestling, archery, and other competitions, celebrated heroic values, courage, and physical excellence central to Greek identity. Warriors competed passionately, honoring Patroclus' memory while showcasing their skills and prowess. These events reinforced unity, reviving spirits while reinforcing mutual respect and solidarity among Greek warriors. The funeral games also provided Achilles with personal catharsis, allowing him to channel grief constructively. By honoring Patroclus, Achilles reinforced his friend's legacy, immortalizing his memory through shared rituals that celebrated warrior traditions and ideals. This collective grieving process illustrated how profoundly personal loss could unify individuals, even amidst divisive warfare. The games additionally underscored critical aspects of ancient Greek culture, notably reverence for the dead and the significance of honorable remembrance. Funeral rituals provided critical closure, enabling warriors to regain emotional stability and continue the struggle with renewed purpose. The deeply ritualized events highlighted timeless themes of friendship, honor, grief, and communal healing. Thus, Patroclus's funeral games significantly impacted Greek morale, reflecting profound emotional bonds and cultural traditions. The ritualistic competitions vividly explored the emotional dimensions of war, illuminating themes of loss, remembrance, unity, and the human capacity to find solace amidst profound grief. Death of Achilles. The death of Hector marked the beginning of the end for Troy, but the city would not fall while Achilles still lived. The greatest of Greek warriors, having avenged his beloved Patroclus, continued to be an unstoppable force on the battlefield. Yet the prophecy that had hung over him since birth, that he would either live a long, unremarkable life or die young in a blaze of glory, was drawing inexorably toward fulfillment. Achilles himself was acutely aware of his approaching fate. During his meeting with King Priam, when the elderly Trojan ruler came to ransom Hector's body, Achilles had spoken with surprising candor about the destiny of all mortals to suffer, reflecting a newfound wisdom born of grief and an acceptance of his own imminent death. This fatalistic awareness did not diminish his prowess in battle, but it lent a poignant quality to his final days, as he fought with the knowledge that each victory brought him closer to his end. The circumstances of Achilles' death are not described in Homer's Iliad, which concludes with Hector's funeral. However, later Greek sources fill in this crucial chapter of the Trojan War. According to these accounts, Achilles met his end while leading an assault on Troy's Scaean gates. Some versions of the story tell of how he fell in love with Polyxena, daughter of King Priam, after seeing her at the ransom of Hector's body. Seeking to marry her, he arranged a meeting near the temple of Apollo Tyndareus, just outside the city walls. It was a fatal error for the man who had seemed invincible in open combat to place himself in such a vulnerable position. Whether he came for diplomatic negotiations or was lured by the promise of love, the result was the same. Achilles had placed himself within reach of his enemies without the protection of his myrmidons. As Achilles approached the temple, Paris, guided by the god Apollo, concealed himself behind the sanctuary's columns. Though not renowned for his prowess in direct combat, Paris possessed exceptional skill with the bow, the weapon that had allowed him to kill the mighty Greek hero Achilles' heel. Taking careful aim at the one vulnerable spot on Achilles' body, his heel, which had not been dipped in the river Styx when his mother sought to make him invulnerable in infancy, Paris loosed his arrow. Some accounts say that Apollo himself guided the shaft to ensure it found its mark. The arrow struck true, piercing Achilles' heel and injecting deadly poison that quickly spread through his body. The greatest warrior of the age, who had slain countless Trojans, including their champion Hector, was brought down not in glorious face-to-face combat, but by a hidden archer's shot from behind. A fierce battle erupted over Achilles' body as the Trojans sought to claim this ultimate trophy, and the Greeks fought desperately to protect their fallen champion. Ajax the Greater, second only to Achilles in martial prowess among the Greeks, took up the defense of the corpse, fighting with such ferocity that none could stand against him. Odysseus joined in this effort, using his tactical brilliance to help secure the body. Together, they managed to fight their way back to the Greek camp with Achilles' remains, denying the Trojans their prize. The grief that swept through the Greek forces at the news of Achilles' death was profound. Here was a loss that seemed to change the very nature of the war, removing from the field the one warrior whose mere presence had terrified the enemy. Funeral games, even more elaborate than those held for Patroclus, were organized to honor the fallen hero, with Achilles' magnificent armor, the divine panoply crafted by Hephaestus, set aside as a prize for the Greek judged most worthy to receive it. The death of Achilles represented more than the loss of the Greeks' greatest warrior. It marked a transition in the nature of the Trojan War itself. The conflict had begun as a straightforward military expedition to retrieve Helen and punish Paris for violating the laws of hospitality. It had evolved through Achilles' wrath and withdrawal into a more complex narrative about honor, friendship, and the consequences of unbridled emotion. Now, with Achilles' death, the war entered its final phase, a struggle that would be won not through the martial excellence exemplified by Achilles, but through the cunning and deception that were Odysseus's domain. The age of heroes fighting in single combat for personal glory was giving way to a new approach to warfare, one that would ultimately succeed where direct assault had failed. In the aftermath of his death, Achilles achieved the immortality of fame that he had chosen over a long life of obscurity. His name would echo through the centuries as the epitome of martial excellence and heroic glory. Yet his death also highlighted the limitations of individual heroism in the face of fate and the complex interplay of human and divine forces. The arrow that struck him down was loosed by Paris, the man whose actions had precipitated the war, but guided by Apollo, the god who had supported Troy throughout the conflict. This combination of human agency and divine intervention reflected the Greek understanding that mortal affairs were shaped by both human choices and the inscrutable will of the gods. Achilles had known that returning to battle would lead to his death, yet he had chosen that path willingly, preferring a brief life crowned with glory to a long one without honor. In this, he embodied the heroic ideal that would inspire generations of warriors and poets long after Troy had fallen and been rebuilt upon its ashes. Ajax's madness and demise. Ajax, renowned for his colossal strength and steadfast courage, represented another tragic figure in the war's tapestry. He had stood proudly among the foremost Greek champions, second only to Achilles in martial prowess. With Achilles gone, Ajax hoped to inherit his armor, a symbol of supreme valor, believing it rightfully his. However, when it was awarded to the clever Odysseus instead, Ajax felt deeply betrayed and humiliated. The adjudication process, judged in part by the rulers and war council, deemed Odysseus's cunning more valuable than pure force, fueling intense resentment within Ajax's heart. Overcome by the injustice he believed was inflicted upon him, Ajax wrestled with conflicting emotions that threatened his mental stability. Stripped of the honor he expected to claim, he fell into a state of despair that pushed him toward the edge of reason. The anger and humiliation gnawed at him, undermining his once steadfast resolve and transforming him into a man tortured by bitterness. His standing as a loyal Greek warrior wavered under the weight of perceived betrayal. In a moment of blind fury, Ajax attempted a violent act he believed would avenge his honor. Sinking deeper into that clouded rage, he targeted what he believed to be the leaders responsible for his disgrace. Yet the cunning of the gods distorted his mind, and instead of attacking his rivals, Ajax slaughtered livestock, believing them to be the warriors who had deprived him of his rightful prize. This delusion, fueled by pride and intense frustration, laid bare the fragility of even the strongest minds under the constant pressures of war. When reality emerged from the haze of his wrath, Ajax felt overwhelming shame and guilt. He recognized his actions were both futile and tragic, and he could not reconcile the depth of his madness. Stripped of dignity and devastated by the realization of his own folly, he determined that life held no further meaning. Retreating from the Greek encampment, he chose a lonely end, taking his own life and further devastating an already sorrowful Greek force. Ajax's tragic demise served as a haunting reflection on the destructive nature of pride and wounded honor. In the wake of his madness, the Greeks were reminded that war not only tested physical endurance and skill, but also the limits of sanity and self-control. Ajax's downfall stood as a grim testament to the extreme toll that unrestrained anger and personal despair could exact, illustrating yet another dimension of the Trojan War's relentless pursuit of both body and soul. Recruitment of Neoptolemus and Philoctetes. The grueling conflict at Troy had endured longer than many anticipated, wearing down both armies and revealing unexpected weaknesses in the Greek forces. A crucial prophecy then emerged, proclaiming that Troy would never fall without the involvement of two vital figures. One was Neoptolemus, the young son of Achilles, and the other was Philoctetes, the archer who possessed the legendary bow of Hercules. This revelation startled the Greeks, who realized victory hinged on securing the allegiance of these two warriors and the power they represented. Neoptolemus lived in relative obscurity, too young when his father sailed to Troy to have joined the original expedition. Nevertheless, he carried Achilles' bloodline and the expectation that he might inherit his father's skills and bravery. Odysseus, known for his cunning, understood that recruiting Neoptolemus meant more than simply adding another warrior. It signaled the reintroduction of Achilles' legacy, a morale boost capable of reviving Greek determination. Yet Neoptolemus needed convincing, grappling with both grief and a sense of destiny he had never fully confronted. Meanwhile, Philoctetes, exiled on the island of Lemnos, had once been a respected comrade among the Greeks. His skill with Hercules' bow was unmatched, but a festering wound earned him abandonment. Greek commanders, believing his affliction was a curse that harmed morale, deserted him on the lonely shore. However, once the prophecy declared Philoctetes essential, the Greeks regretted their earlier ruthlessness, realizing they must appease and retrieve him to fulfill the destined conditions for victory. Odysseus and Diomedes ventured across the sea to persuade both Neoptolemus and Philoctetes to join the war effort. Their journey revealed the depth of Greek desperation, as they humbly entreated those they had once overlooked or wronged. This recruitment underscored critical themes of atonement and destiny, emphasizing the fragile alliance that held Greece together, now revitalized by the promise of prophecies and the hidden might that these overlooked warriors could unleash. In embracing their roles, Neoptolemus and Philoctetes infused fresh determination into the Greek cause, each symbolizing the power of lost or forgotten heroes who re-emerge when fate demands. Through their arrival, the Greeks gained a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that sometimes victory depended on embracing prophecy and restoring broken bonds rather than relying solely on the mightiest champions already at the forefront. Deaths of Paris and Memnon. While Achilles had fallen at the hands of Paris through divine intervention, the new arrivals among the Greek forces began shifting the tide. Paris, once viewed as a romantic prince protected by Aphrodite's favor, found himself increasingly isolated. His role in triggering the war had left him vulnerable to fate's harsh judgment, and as the conflict took fresh turns, his allies grew fewer. Philoctetes' return, bearing Hercules' bow, sealed Paris's fate by fulfilling the prophecy that his arrows would bring about the downfall of key Trojan figures. In a fierce encounter outside Troy's walls, Philoctetes unleashed a deadly arrow that found its mark, bringing Paris to the end foretold by the oracles. The prince who sparked the war by taking Helen now fell in ignoble fashion, undermined by a weapon linked to Greece's oldest hero. Paris's demise heightened tensions in the city, for it not only removed a royal son of Priam, but also struck at the heart of Aphrodite's protection, proving that divine patronage had limits even for favored mortals. Soon afterward, the Trojan cause rallied behind another mighty ally, Memnon, the Ethiopian king whose formidable forces arrived in support of Troy's beleaguered warriors. Memnon's reputation rivaled that of the greatest heroes, and his exotic origins brought renewed spirit to those defending the city. Yet destiny again favored the Greeks, who found in Neoptolemus and the rejuvenated morale the strength to stand against Memnon's challenge. Memnon fought valiantly, demonstrating a regal presence and strength that initially stunned the Greek forces. However, his campaign ended in brutal tragedy on the battlefield, where he was overpowered, leaving Trojan hopes once again vulnerable. His death reinforced a pattern of noble allies arriving at Troy and ultimately succumbing, intensifying the city's isolation. The passing of these key figures revealed the mounting desperation of the Trojans and the unrelenting resolve of the Greeks. Each loss chipped away at Troy's defenses, churning the city's morale and pushing both armies further into the harsh realities of war. Paris's downfall in particular carried profound symbolic weight, for the conflict that began with his impulsive pursuit of love would soon reach its decisive climax. Theft of the Palladium. Among Troy's most sacred treasures stood the Palladium, a revered statue of the goddess Athena. Legend held that Troy could never be taken as long as the Palladium remained within its walls. This artifact represented the city's divine protection, embodying the hope and security that sustained Trojan defenders throughout the grueling siege. Understanding its significance, the Greeks resolved to seize it, believing that its removal would finally fracture Troy's impregnable mystique. Odysseus and Diomedes once again took on a perilous infiltration, using stealth and guile. Their approach reflected the Greeks' readiness to resort to daring espionage over outright assaults, acknowledging the formidable walls and determined Trojan resistance. Under the cover of darkness, they scaled Troy's defenses, navigating the city's labyrinthine streets until they reached the secluded sanctuary where the Palladium stood. Senses heightened by the gravity of their mission, they carefully removed the treasured statue, conscious that detection would trigger disastrous consequences. The Trojans, alarmed and bereft at the discovery, experienced a profound blow to their collective spirit. For centuries, the Palladium had been more than a simple idol. It was the talisman that anchored their faith in divine protection. Its theft signaled an end to the unshakable confidence that Troy's walls could withstand all threats. A wave of anxiety spread among both soldiers and civilians, who sensed their ancient prophecy unraveling. Back in the Greek camp, the successful theft of the Palladium was celebrated with awe and relief. Warriors hailed Odysseus and Diomedes as heroes, recognizing the boldness and skill required to penetrate Troy's sacred interior. Yet the act also stirred questions of ethical boundaries in warfare. The Greeks knew that undermining Trojan faith was a harsh yet necessary step toward breaking the stalemate. By removing Troy's strongest spiritual shield, the Greeks cleared a path to future victories. The once mighty city, weighed down by losses and sapped of its divine essence, was left perilously vulnerable. This significant operation further showcased how cunning, strategic planning, and audacity could shift the balance of power in protracted warfare. Odysseus and the Trojan Horse 1170 BC. After 10 long years of warfare, with countless lives lost on both sides, the Greek forces found themselves at an impasse. Despite fulfilling the various prophecies required for victory, bringing Neoptolemus to Troy, retrieving Philoctetes and his divine bow, stealing the Palladium, they had still failed to breach the mighty walls of the city. Direct military assault had proven ineffective year after year, and the Greeks were growing weary of the seemingly endless conflict. It was in this atmosphere of frustration and dwindling hope that Odysseus, inspired by Athena, conceived of a stratagem so audacious and unprecedented that it would forever change the nature of warfare and become synonymous with deception itself: the Trojan Horse. The plan that Odysseus proposed to the Greek leadership was both ingenious and fraught with risk. The Greeks would construct an enormous wooden horse, hollow inside and large enough to conceal a select group of their finest warriors. The rest of the army would appear to abandon the war, burning their camps and sailing away just far enough to remain hidden behind the nearby island of Tyndareus. The Trojans, seeing the Greeks depart and finding only the massive wooden horse left behind, would be faced with a decision about this strange object. To ensure they would bring it within their walls, the Greeks would leave a single man behind who would present himself as a deserter and convince the Trojans that the horse was an offering to Athena, one that would bring good fortune to whoever possessed it and misfortune to those who damaged it. The construction of the horse was entrusted to Hippias, a skilled craftsman who had distinguished himself in the boxing competition during the funeral games for Patroclus. Working with selected artisans from the Greek army, Hippias created a structure of impressive size and workmanship, using wooden planks from ships and adorning it with details that suggested a votive offering rather than a military device. The horse stood tall enough to clear the gates of Troy, with a trapdoor cleverly concealed in its flank. Inside, narrow platforms were constructed where warriors could wait in cramped discomfort until the critical moment arrived. When the massive creation was complete, the bravest of the Greek warriors volunteered for the perilous mission of hiding within it, knowing they would be at the mercy of their enemies if the deception was discovered. The accounts vary as to exactly how many men entered the horse, with numbers ranging from 23 to 30, but all sources agree on the exceptional courage required for the mission. Among those who concealed themselves inside were Odysseus himself, Menelaus, Diomedes, Neoptolemus, and the lesser Ajax. As the chosen warriors climbed one by one into the wooden structure, they understood that they were placing their lives in terrible jeopardy. If the Trojans grew suspicious and decided to burn the horse or break it apart, they would be trapped inside with no means of escape. Even if the horse was brought into the city as planned, they would still find themselves vastly outnumbered once they emerged. Only absolute surprise and perfect coordination could prevent their immediate slaughter once they revealed themselves within the enemy's stronghold. With the select warriors concealed inside the horse, the remainder of the Greek army enacted the next phase of the plan. They burned their camps, leaving the beach littered with debris to suggest a hasty and final departure. Their ships sailed away, apparently abandoning the decade-long siege, though in reality, they merely circled to the far side of Tyndareus, where they would wait for a signal fire indicating success. Left behind on the shore was Sinon, a Greek soldier who had volunteered for perhaps the most dangerous role in the deception. When Trojan scouts cautiously approached the abandoned Greek position, they found Sinon alone, presenting himself as a deserter who had escaped sacrifice at the hands of Odysseus. His tale was calculated to appeal to Trojan sympathies while simultaneously raising their curiosity about the wooden horse. According to the story Sinon told his Trojan captors, the Greeks had grown desperate after years of failure and had consulted the prophet Calchas about how to appease Athena, whose favor they had lost. Calchas had declared that they must construct an offering to the goddess so large that the Trojans could not bring it into their city, thereby ensuring it would remain with the Greeks and continue to grant them divine protection. By this account, the horse had been deliberately built to massive proportions, specifically so it would not fit through Troy's gates. Sinon claimed that if the Trojans were to bring the offering inside their walls, Athena's favor would transfer to them, and Troy would never fall. This cleverly crafted tale played on Trojan religious sensibilities and their natural desire to appropriate an object that might secure divine protection for themselves while removing it from their enemies. The Trojans, gathered around the massive wooden structure, debated what to do with this unexpected gift. Some, like the priest Laocoon, were deeply suspicious. In one of the most famous warnings in literature, he cautioned his fellow citizens, "I fear the Greeks, even when they bring gifts," and urged them to destroy the horse immediately. To emphasize his point, he hurled his spear at the horse's flank, causing it to resonate hollowly, a sound that should have confirmed his suspicions. At that critical moment, when the entire deception hung in the balance, the gods intervened in favor of the Greek stratagem. Two enormous serpents emerged from the sea and attacked Laocoon and his sons, crushing them in their coils before disappearing into the temple of Athena. The Trojans interpreted this horrific event as divine punishment for Laocoon's attack on the offering, confirming in their minds that the horse was indeed sacred and should be brought within their city. The final push to convince the hesitant Trojans came from an unexpected source. Helen, whose abduction had started the war 10 years earlier, approached the horse and circled it, calling out to the hidden Greeks by name and mimicking the voices of their wives. Inside the horse, the warriors struggled to maintain silence, with Odysseus physically restraining those who might have responded to these provocations. Another Trojan, Cassandra, the daughter of King Priam, who had been blessed with prophetic vision, but cursed never to be believed, also warned against bringing the horse into the city. Like all her prophecies, this one too was ignored. The Trojans, convinced that the wooden horse represented their final victory over the departed Greeks, made their fateful decision. They breached a section of their own walls to accommodate the massive structure, as it was too large to fit through the gates, and dragged it into the heart of their city with celebration and rejoicing. That night, as the exhausted Trojans slept after their celebrations, Sinon crept to the horse and opened the concealed trapdoor. One by one, the Greek warriors emerged, stiff from their long confinement, but determined in their purpose. They silently dispatched the guards they encountered and made their way to the city gates, opening them to admit the main Greek force, which had returned under cover of darkness after seeing the signal fire lit by Sinon. The trap was sprung, and Troy, which had withstood direct assault for a decade, fell in a single night to cunning and deception. The wooden horse, ostensibly a symbol of surrender and religious devotion, had instead become the instrument of the city's destruction, demonstrating that in warfare, innovation and strategic thinking could succeed where brute force had failed for years. The fall of Troy, 1170 BC. The night that Troy fell began with celebration and ended in horror. Having dragged the massive wooden horse within their walls, the Trojans believed they had finally achieved victory over their Greek tormentors. They held feasts throughout the city, drinking wine and rejoicing that the 10-year siege had ended with the enemy's departure. This celebration, however, left them vulnerable. Guards were lax or intoxicated, vigilance was abandoned, and the city's legendary defenses were compromised by their own hands when they breached the walls to admit the horse. As night fell and exhaustion from the day's excitement took hold, the Trojans slept deeply, unaware that their moment of greatest triumph was about to become their most catastrophic defeat. Inside the wooden horse, the hidden Greek warriors had endured hours of cramped discomfort, maintaining absolute silence despite provocations and the terrifying moment when Laocoon's spear struck the horse's flank. Now, as the sounds of celebration faded and the city grew quiet, they prepared for their deadly mission. Odysseus, the architect of the stratagem, gave the signal, and one by one, they descended from their hiding place. Their first targets were the guards posted near the horse, who were silently dispatched before they could raise an alarm. Then the warriors split into smaller groups with specific objectives. Some headed for the city gates to open them for the main Greek force waiting outside. Others moved to secure strategic points within Troy, and some began the grim work of slaughter that would characterize the night. The main Greek army, which had only pretended to depart, had sailed back under cover of darkness after seeing the signal fire lit by Sinon. They waited tensely outside the city walls until the gates were opened from within by their comrades who had emerged from the horse. Once the way was clear, they poured into Troy like a flood, their swords already drawn for the killing to come. The Trojans, awakening to the sounds of fighting, found themselves trapped in a nightmare. Many were cut down in their beds before they could reach their weapons, while others managed to form small groups of resistance that were quickly overwhelmed by the coordinated Greek assault. King Priam called for his armor despite his advanced age, determined to die fighting, rather than witness the complete destruction of his city, but was persuaded by his wife Hecuba to seek sanctuary at the altar of Zeus instead. The fall of Troy was marked by atrocities that violated the most sacred laws of warfare and religion. Neoptolemus, son of Achilles, proved particularly savage in his conduct. Finding the elderly King Priam and Queen Hecuba at the altar of Zeus, where they had sought divine protection along with their surviving children, he showed no respect for the sanctuary. Before the horrified eyes of his parents, Neoptolemus slaughtered the young Pollux, one of Priam's few remaining sons. When the aged king protested this sacrilege, Neoptolemus dragged him from the altar and killed him as well, beheading the man who had once knelt before Achilles to beg for Hector's body. This violation of sacred space demonstrated how completely the normal constraints of civilized behavior had collapsed in the frenzy of Troy's fall. Other horrors compounded the tragedy of that night. Ajax the Lesser, cousin of the greater Ajax, who had taken his own life earlier in the war, found the Princess Cassandra clinging to a statue of Athena for protection. Unmoved by her status as a consecrated priestess, he violated her in the temple itself, committing an act of sacrilege against the very goddess whose supposed gift the Trojan horse had been. Elsewhere in the city, Odysseus and Menelaus located the home of Deiphobus, who had married Helen after Paris's death. They killed him brutally, mutilating his corpse in revenge for his marriage to Helen. Menelaus then sought out Helen herself, intending to kill his unfaithful wife, but according to legend, when he found her, her extraordinary beauty caused his sword to fall from his hand. Unable to execute the woman he had fought 10 years to reclaim, he instead took her back to his ship as his prize. The women and children of Troy who survived the initial slaughter faced a fate that many considered worse than death. They were gathered as spoils of war, to be distributed among the Greek leaders as slaves and concubines. Hecuba, once queen of wealthy Troy, now faced slavery in her old age. Her daughter Polyxena was sacrificed on the tomb of Achilles, supposedly to appease his ghost and ensure favorable winds for the Greek fleet's homeward journey. Another daughter, Cassandra, was claimed by Agamemnon as his concubine, a choice that would contribute to his eventual murder. Andromache, widow of Hector, was given to Neoptolemus, forced to become the concubine of the man whose father had killed her husband and whose own hands had slain her son. These high-born women, accustomed to lives of privilege and respect, now faced a future of servitude and degradation in foreign lands. As dawn broke over the ruined city, the Greeks completed their destruction of what had once been one of the wealthiest and most magnificent cities in the world. Buildings that had stood for generations were put to the torch, temples were looted of their treasures, and the famous walls that had withstood a decade of siege were systematically demolished. The smoke from burning Troy rose high into the sky, visible for miles around, a signal to all that the mighty city had finally fallen. After 10 years of warfare, countless deaths on both sides, and the direct intervention of the gods themselves, the conflict that had begun with Paris's abduction of Helen had reached its brutal conclusion. Troy was no more, its people enslaved or slaughtered, its very location destined to become a matter of archaeological debate rather than living memory. The fall of Troy marked not just the end of a war, but the end of an era, closing the heroic age and becoming the defining catastrophe that would echo through Western literature and art for millennia to come. Fate of Trojan survivors. Although Troy had been reduced to smoldering ruins, not all within its walls perished. Some survivors escaped the inferno, fleeing the city to find uncertain futures. Among them was Aeneas, guided by the gods to preserve a destiny beyond Troy's demise. His flight, carrying his father and household gods, would become the foundation of future legends, linking the fall of Troy with the eventual rise of great civilizations elsewhere. However, many who survived were taken captive. Trojan women, renowned for their dignity and beauty, faced the grim reality of enslavement or forced marriage. Cassandra, cursed with prophetic powers yet doomed never to be believed, was claimed as a war prize by Agamemnon. Her visions, once dismissed by her fellow Trojans, now haunted her in a distant Greek land where tragedy would soon overtake her again. Others, including children of Trojan nobility, faced harsh fates at the hands of Greek victors who sought to eradicate any future threat. Figures like Andromache, Hector's widow, were forced into servitude, carrying on a shadowy existence far removed from their former status. The Trojan exodus thus revealed a painful tapestry of human suffering, exposing the darkest themes of what war can yield. In the midst of devastation, acts of compassion occasionally emerged. Some Greeks showed mercy or recognized the bravery shown by their former foes. Yet these glimmers of empathy were overwhelmed by the structural realities of conquest, where property, glory, and vengeance often overshadowed mercy and understanding. The final days of Troy underscored the lingering consequences of war. Survivors carried the trauma with them, shaping legends and cultures for generations to come. The story of Aeneas, in particular, bridged the destruction of Troy with the founding of new lineages and empires, symbolizing that from the ashes of a great city could arise new chapters of civilization and myth. Return journeys of Greek heroes. With Troy's fall, the triumphant Greeks expected to return home laden with spoils and renown. Yet their journeys proved far from straightforward, revealing that war's end did not guarantee swift and peaceful returns. The gods, angered by sacrilegious acts committed during Troy's sack, unleashed storms and perils that scattered the Greek fleets across treacherous seas. Such divine retribution, fueled by grudges and moral transgressions, transformed the once victorious armies into wandering mariners at the mercy of nature and fate. Foremost among these voyages was Odysseus's arduous return to Ithaca. His odyssey through distant lands and perilous adventures became a defining testament to human endurance. From encounters with the Cyclops to resisting the allure of the Sirens, Odysseus faced cunning adversaries and supernatural challenges. Each episode highlighted themes of resilience, wit, and unwavering commitment to home and family. Meanwhile, other Greek leaders faced their own fateful destinies upon returning. Men such as Diomedes and Idomeneus discovered that the passage of time had altered the fabric of their kingdoms, testing their ability to reassert authority or find peace. Nestor, the wise old king, navigated these uncertain waters with a more measured approach, epitomizing caution informed by a lifetime of warfare. These return journeys underscored the unpredictable outcomes of war, reminding everyone that battles fought abroad could spawn untold consequences back home. Some heroes encountered family betrayals or political upheaval, revealing that the Trojan War's turmoil had rippled far beyond the city's walls, affecting the entire tapestry of Greek society. Ultimately, the fragmented paths of each hero illustrated how victory in foreign lands did not always translate to harmony in domestic realms. The gods' capricious interventions, combined with the legacies of trauma and infighting, demonstrated that the Greek triumph at Troy demanded further struggles and quests for resolution. Each warrior carried a piece of Troy's story home, woven into their own trials, forging a collective lesson about the endurance of the human spirit. Agamemnon's murder. For Agamemnon, the voyage back to Mycenae became a transition from commanding triumphant armies to confronting personal doom. During the years he waged war at Troy, his queen, Clytemnestra, festered in anger and grief, never forgiving him for the sacrifice of their daughter Iphigenia. The news of Agamemnon's return stirred conflicting emotions, overshadowed by a hidden thirst for vengeance. Arriving with Cassandra as his concubine, Agamemnon believed he would be welcomed with ceremony and feast. He anticipated recounting the war's glories and confirming his undisputed authority. However, he underestimated the depth of Clytemnestra's resentment and the twisted alliances formed in his absence. Her lover Aegisthus, determined to usurp power, joined her in a murderous conspiracy that would claim Mycenae's throne. Lured into the palace with cunning hospitality, Agamemnon soon faced a brutal betrayal. While some versions hint that he was slain in a bath, others recount him pinned down in a net, a final humiliation underscoring Clytemnestra's calculated wrath. Regardless of the details, Agamemnon's end was swift and merciless, symbolizing retribution for the blood sacrifice of Iphigenia that had tainted his triumph from the beginning. Cassandra, too, met a tragic demise, unable to escape the cruel fate she had prophesied yet again. Her warnings fell on deaf ears, an unbroken pattern that sealed her doom within the palace walls. The double murder sent shockwaves through Mycenae, illustrating how the cycle of violence and vengeance unleashed by the war continued unabated, spreading gloom even in times of supposed victory. With Agamemnon's murder, the story entered a darker realm, revealing the fragility of power and the destructive potential of long-held resentments. His death illustrated that no measure of war trophies or epic renown could protect a leader from the personal consequences of moral debts. The tragedy symbolized the ultimate price of Troy's conquest, showing how bitter seeds sown in war could yield only turmoil upon the hero's return. Menelaus and Helen's return. While Agamemnon fell to a grisly conspiracy, his brother Menelaus and Helen embarked on a challenging journey back to Sparta. Their relationship, which had sparked the entire Trojan War, remained complicated by betrayal and loss. Despite the brutal siege fought in her name, Helen's presence again stirred controversy among the Greek victors. Some viewed her as a scapegoat, while others saw her as an enchanting victim of the gods' manipulations. Their voyage home proved unexpectedly lengthy. Storms and divine interferences forced them to wander across foreign realms, encountering strange customs and uncertain welcomes. Through these misadventures, Menelaus and Helen had ample time to confront the tangled emotions that lingered between them. Anger mingled with lingering affection, revealing the complicated bonds forged by shared past and uncertain love. Eventually, Menelaus and Helen reached Sparta, the kingdom that had once served as the stage for their fateful union. The citizens, initially wary and resentful, observed the couple's return with mixed emotions. Some believed Menelaus had vindicated his honor in battle, while others questioned whether Helen's eventual return truly compensated for years of bloodshed and grief across the Aegean. Over time, Menelaus's rule stabilized, and Helen resumed her role as queen, forever marked by the war's aftermath. Though memories of Paris and the Trojan conflict lingered, Helen sought to foster peace and prosperity, a faint acknowledgement of the suffering she had unwittingly helped unleash. Her legendary beauty remained a potent symbol, reminding all that a single individual's choices, shaped by divine meddling and human passion, could upheave entire civilizations. Their homecoming underscored the war's paradoxes. Menelaus gained back the wife he had lost, yet carried the unseen wounds of years lost in battle. Helen found herself both revered and reviled, still burdened by the heavy legacy of her abduction. Together, they personified a fragile reconciliation between past and future, demonstrating that even after the hardest battles are won, the journey toward normalcy remains uncertain and fraught with lingering ghosts. Was the Trojan War real or just a myth? For centuries, the Trojan War existed primarily as a magnificent story, a foundational narrative of Western literature that blended human drama with divine intervention. The epics of Homer, the Iliad, and the Odyssey, along with other ancient works, presented the conflict as historical fact, yet their inclusion of gods, supernatural elements, and seemingly impossible feats of heroism led many modern scholars to dismiss the entire tale as pure mythology. This skepticism was particularly strong in the 19th century, when academic approaches to ancient texts emphasized rational analysis and documentary evidence. The Trojan War, with its decade-long siege, wooden horse, and divine machinations, seemed to belong more to the realm of folklore than history. However, the question of whether this legendary conflict had any basis in reality remained tantalizingly open, challenging archaeologists, historians, and linguists to search for evidence that might connect Homer's poetic vision to actual events in the late Bronze Age. The first significant breakthrough in this search came from an unlikely source, a wealthy German businessman named Heinrich Schliemann. Though lacking formal archaeological training, Schliemann was driven by an unshakable belief that Homer's epics described real places and events. In 1871, he began excavations at Hisarlik in northwestern Turkey, a site that local tradition and some scholarly speculation had identified as possible location of ancient Troy. What Schliemann discovered there astonished the academic world. Beneath the surface lay not one city, but many, built one atop another in successive layers spanning thousands of years. Schliemann initially identified the second city from the bottom, Troy II, as Homer's Troy, believing that a treasure of gold artifacts he unearthed there, which he named Priam's treasure, belonged to the Trojan king. Later, archaeologists would determine that this level was actually much too early, dating to about 2500 BCE, roughly 1,000 years before the traditional date of the Trojan War. Subsequent excavations at Hisarlik, particularly those conducted by Wilhelm Dorpfold in the 1880s and Carl Bliegen in the 1930s, revealed a much more complex picture of the site's history. They identified multiple phases of construction, destruction, and rebuilding, with Troy VI and Troy VIIa emerging as the most likely candidates for the city described in Homer's epics. Troy VI was a prosperous citadel with impressive walls that ended in a destruction layer dating to around 1300 BCE, possibly caused by an earthquake. Troy VIIa, built immediately afterward, showed signs of hasty reconstruction and eventual destruction by fire around 1180 BCE, a date that aligns closely with the traditional timing of the Trojan War. Evidence of human remains in the streets, arrowheads embedded in the walls, and food stores prepared for a siege all suggested that this layer of the city had indeed fallen to enemy action rather than natural disaster. The archaeological evidence from Hisarlik was complemented by discoveries elsewhere that lent credence to elements of the Trojan War narrative. Excavations at Mycenae, the legendary home of Agamemnon, revealed a wealthy and powerful civilization capable of mounting large military expeditions. The decipherment of linear B tablets from various Mycenaean sites confirmed that the political structure of late Bronze Age Greece resembled that described by Homer, with a high king commanding the loyalty of various lesser kings and princes. Hittite diplomatic texts from the same period mentioned a kingdom called Ahiawa that many scholars now identify as a Hittite term for the Mycenaean Greeks, placing them in diplomatic and occasionally hostile contact with powers in western Anatolia. One Hittite document even refers to a dispute over a place called Wilusa, possibly Ilion, another name for Troy, involving an individual whose name resembles Alexandros, an alternative name for Paris in the Homeric tradition. These archaeological and textual discoveries suggest that while Homer's epics certainly contain elements of poetic embellishment and supernatural fantasy, they may preserve memories of actual historical events. The most plausible scenario, according to many contemporary scholars, is that the Trojan War represents a poetic distillation of multiple conflicts between Mycenaean Greeks and the inhabitants of northwestern Anatolia during the Late Bronze Age. Rather than a single 10-year siege over a kidnapped queen, the historical reality may have involved a series of raids and battles fought for control of the strategically valuable Dardanelles Strait, which connected the Aegean Sea to the Black Sea and was a crucial trade route. Troy's position would have allowed it to control this waterway and potentially charge tolls on passing ships, making it both wealthy and a natural target for Greek maritime powers seeking unfettered access to Black Sea resources. The question of the Trojan War's historicity thus cannot be answered with a simple yes or no. The conflict as described by Homer, complete with divine intervention, heroes of superhuman strength, and a wooden horse, certainly contains significant mythological elements. Yet, the archaeological evidence strongly suggests that Troy existed as a real city in approximately the right location and time period, that it was destroyed by warfare around the traditional date of the Trojan War, and that Mycenaean Greeks were active in the region and capable of mounting such an expedition. This complex interweaving of myth and history is characteristic of how ancient societies preserved memories of their past. Without written records or scientific historiography, events were remembered through oral traditions that gradually transformed historical figures into heroes, compressed multiple incidents into single narratives, and introduced supernatural elements to explain otherwise inexplicable occurrences. The Trojan War as we know it today likely represents such a transformation, a poetic rendering of historical conflicts that, through the genius of Homer and other ancient poets, transcended its origins to become one of the most enduring and influential stories in human culture. Was the Trojan Horse real? Of all the elements in the Trojan War narrative, perhaps none has captured the imagination quite like the Trojan Horse. This massive wooden structure, which according to legend allowed Greek warriors to hide inside and breach the otherwise impenetrable walls of Troy, has become synonymous with deception and military cunning. The phrase Trojan Horse has entered our modern lexicon as a term for any strategy that involves getting behind an opponent's defenses through trickery rather than direct confrontation. Yet despite its cultural ubiquity, the historical reality of the Trojan Horse remains one of the most debated aspects of the entire Trojan War story. Was this ingenious stratagem an actual historical event, a symbolic representation of something more mundane, or purely a poetic invention designed to provide a memorable conclusion to an epic tale? The primary ancient sources for the Trojan Horse story come from literature rather than historical documentation. Homer's Iliad, which focuses on a brief period in the war's final year, does not actually describe the horse stratagem, as it concludes with Hector's funeral before these events occur. The earliest detailed account comes from Virgil's Aeneid, written in the 1st century BCE, nearly 1,000 years after the traditional date of the Trojan War. Other references appear in Homer's Odyssey, where Menelaus and Helen briefly recall the incident, and in fragments of the epic cycle, a collection of poems that filled in parts of the Trojan War story not covered by the Iliad. These literary sources present the horse as a literal wooden construction large enough to conceal several dozen warriors, built by the Greeks and left outside Troy's gates as a supposed offering to Athena after the Greek fleet pretended to depart. archaeological evidence provides no direct confirmation of the Trojan horse's existence. Excavations at Hisarlik, the site most archaeologists identify as ancient Troy, have revealed no physical remains of such a structure, though this is hardly surprising given the perishable nature of wood and the millennia that have passed since the city's fall. What archaeology does confirm is that Troy 7a, the level most commonly associated with Homer's Troy, was indeed destroyed around 1180 BCE, with evidence suggesting the city fell to enemy action rather than natural disaster. Fire damage, arrowheads in the walls, and unburied bodies in the streets all point to a violent end consistent with the traditional account of the city's capture. However, these findings neither confirm nor refute the specific method by which the city was taken. In the absence of direct evidence, scholars have proposed various interpretations that might explain the origin of the Trojan horse story. One theory suggests that the horse was a poetic metaphor for a military battering ram or siege engine used to breach Troy's walls. Such devices were sometimes covered with wet horse hides to protect them from being set on fire by defenders, potentially creating a visual association with the animal. Another interpretation proposes that the horse might symbolize an earthquake, Poseidon being both the god of horses and earthquakes in Greek mythology, suggesting that a seismic event damaged Troy's walls and allowed the Greeks to enter. Some scholars have even suggested that the horse represented a ship, perhaps a Greek vessel disguised as a merchant trader that concealed warriors within its hold. A more recent and intriguing theory connects the Trojan horse to the Hittite culture that dominated much of Anatolia during the late Bronze Age. Archaeological evidence indicates that Troy had cultural and possibly political connections to the Hittites, for whom the horse was a sacred animal associated with their storm god. According to this interpretation, the Trojan horse might represent a religious offering or ritual object that the Trojans would have felt compelled to bring within their city for religious reasons. The Greeks, understanding this cultural significance, could have exploited it by creating an offering that appeared to honor these religious traditions while actually concealing their warriors. This theory has the advantage of explaining why the Trojans would have been willing to breach their own defenses to admit the structure, something that has always strained credibility in the traditional account. Whether literal or symbolic, the story of the Trojan horse reflects a historical reality about Bronze Age warfare, the extreme difficulty of taking a well-fortified city by direct assault. The massive walls of cities like Troy were specifically designed to withstand sieges, and without modern artillery, attackers had few effective options for breaching such defenses. This military reality made deception and trickery not just desirable, but often necessary strategies. Historical records from other ancient civilizations document various ruses used to enter enemy cities, from soldiers hiding in grain containers to attackers pretending to defect to the opposing side. The Trojan horse story, whether based on an actual incident or invented as a literary device, thus reflects the genuine tactical challenges faced by ancient armies and the premium placed on cunning as a complement to martial prowess. The enduring fascination with the Trojan horse stems partly from its perfect narrative function, providing a satisfying resolution to a seemingly unresolvable military stalemate, and partly from the universal human recognition of deception's power. The story encapsulates the triumph of intelligence over brute force, of strategy over strength, themes that resonate across cultures and time periods. Whether or not a literal wooden horse was used to capture Troy, the stratagem represents a psychological truth about warfare that transcends its specific historical context. This may explain why, even as scholars debate its historical reality, the Trojan horse remains one of the most recognized and referenced elements of the entire Trojan War narrative, a testament to its perfect embodiment of the principle that victory often goes not to the strongest, but to the most cunning. Conclusion: the Trojan War endures as a timeless reminder of the human stories woven into the fabric of history. It vividly illustrates themes of honor, destiny, and love, all propelled by the intense power struggles that define both gods and mortals. Even though archaeologists and scholars remain divided on the war's precise historical authenticity, the narrative continues to fascinate, offering essential insights into ancient culture and human nature. Each battle, prophecy, and tragic decision evokes the depth of human emotion that transcends the ages, granting us a glimpse into a past where heroes lived and fell in pursuit of glory. In reflecting on this epic, we see how conflict can shape civilizations, forge legends, and leave in its wake both triumph and untold sorrow. The sacrifices and moral challenges faced by characters like Achilles, Hector, and Odysseus reach across centuries, illustrating how cultural memory and storytelling keep their voices alive. From the fiery downfall of Troy to the painstaking journeys of the Greek heroes, the lessons remain as vibrant today as they were in the oral traditions of ancient bards, reminding us that the path to understanding history lies in appreciating both its facts and its enduring myths. We hope you have enjoyed this exploration of the Trojan War and its far-reaching significance. Your support enables our 4K historical documentaries to continue bringing captivating stories from ages long past to life. Remember to like and subscribe, and thank you for standing alongside us as we unravel the legends that still echo in our modern world. See you in the next video, friends.